Yeah, this resonates with my personal story. I feel like a lot. And Nick and I have even talked about this very idea a lot. And like I was the total like curious kid. And I love, looking back that my parents totally fostered my curiosity. They let me like literally I was just curious. I just took apart a remote control car when I was a kid. I vividly remember this. I just wanted to see what the motor looked like. I had no real reason other than just being curious. So I took apart a remote control car. Just took a little screwdriver, just did it, and it came out with this little thing. I was like, okay, that was cool. But now I know. So like, and I vividly remember there was a phase of my youth, probably sometime in high school, like later years in high school, where I just like really got comfortable. I don't really know what triggered it. But I just really got comfortable asking questions. I was definitely not the like intelligence leader of my age group growing up. Like I had, to be honest, I had a lot of highly intelligent people in my K-8. I went to a private school, had lots of like great intelligent people, to be honest, that I went to school with. And I always felt like I was on like the lower quarter, like just, and I wasn't upset with myself about it, but I just knew that I wasn't. And I think there's something about like having been surrounded by that level of intelligence and still feeling like I fit in, even if it wasn't on the intelligence landscape, that really allowed me to continue to develop. Because this is what Nick and I have talked about multiple times, is there was definitely a point where, whether it be like high school or college, where I felt my ability to critically think really shifted. And it goes right hand in hand with what you were just saying about like listening, analyzing data coming in, and not thinking that I have to have the answer, but maybe I can provide something that will allow us to come to a new realization. It wasn't about having the right answer. It was about continuing to foster the thought process and all that. And yeah, man, like when I think back, like the fact that I developed, and again, I'd have to really dig deep to figure out how it happened, but the fact that I developed that ability is something I'm extremely grateful for, because I know how much like feel like I'm more conscious of like, am I dominating my workplace team call? And like really trying to contribute, but trying not to dominate. And it's like a level of awareness that I've developed, I think, from just the baseline of like listening and thinking first, and then figuring out where I can contribute. And if I have a question, not being self-conscious of that question. So
that's a great point, Brendan. That really is. And that backstory that's a really great story. I want to talk about your story in just one second, but one of the things that I do a lot to really up my own game is I pay attention to the women in the room who are very sharp, because they're great at picking up on the social cues. They're listening like hell, and they're processing, and they're thinking, what can I do to advance this conversation? That is, men could benefit so much from learning this. And it sounds like, Brendan, what you're talking about is really kind of getting you on that path, because, I was the same way. I was never, I was always on the, on the lower end. Things didn't really start to click for me until I was way out of college, where I started to feel like, okay, so maybe I am smarter. I always thought I was smarter than it seemed like I was. So I can definitely relate to feeling like, you're basically being outclassed. But, the thing that we learn, of course, from grit is that it's all about the willingness to stay with it and stay determined, and just to keep chipping away. And that's what it is, And I think that one of the things you guys, if you haven't already seen, you will see, is that the people who will continue to keep stepping up and succeeding are going to be the ones who are paying attention to, to the right cues that are more silent, and they're doing the listening. And that when they do have a question, it's usually something that really is adding to the conversation. And I think that is really the way, in an increasingly collaborative culture, right, in workplaces, like you talked about, that's the way to add to what employers really are looking for ultimately, which is the contributions you can make as a team player, not just to be a standout. Employers mostly aren't looking for Michael Jordans anymore. And that's a really good thing. They're looking for, how can you stand out as a team player? And that's a really important thing, because to get to that level, requires all these skills that we're talking about, and these are all really important interpersonal skills that boys are really missing out on because we're still not really encouraging them, when they're young and when they're in the classroom and when they're in the workplace. We're still not encouraging them. Look at it, think of it this way, try to contribute to this part of the conversation. One of the things for me that really helped, was doing the work with my wife in our relationship. And she used to say to me early on, instead of coming at me with, say, a criticism, come at me with curiosity. Ask me why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Or why did you just say what you just said? And it was just, oh my God, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because doing that in a relationship is only going to serve the relationship, because it de-escalates the tension, right? And it coming from a place of curiosity, who wouldn't rather have that than accusation? But it's the same thing, in our work relationships. It's coming from a place of curiosity. This is something that is so small and would be so revolutionary for so many young men, and boys to be taught this. It's, if I thought I could make a book out of it, I would do a second book and do it on that. But this really is something that is so small but revolutionary for boys, because it's something, as we're talking about, is so essential to succeeding in the workplace as well now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a whole piece about it with like seeking help too. Like people can't help you if you're going to remain silent, or at least they can't as much as they'd like to. So if you can't express how you're feeling, or even say something to where somebody else will then be curious about why you said that, and you're not going to be on the receiving end of it, then there can't be any progress in that sense.